The Black Hawk cut through the heavy Colombian air as I watched the endless green canopy below. 15 years in Special Forces and 3 as a private contractor had taught me to trust my gut. Something about this job felt deeply wrong. 5 minutes to touchdown, Frank announced, his weathered face unreadable. As team leader, he'd run point on this extraction. As his second in command, I had his back, watching our rear. Kevin Specs O'Malley, our comms and tech specialist, tapped nervously at his tablet. Still no response from the facility, sir. Total radio silence for 72 hours straight now. Expected, Frank replied flatly. Valera Corp lost all contact with Site Chimera 3 days ago. That's why we're here. David Doc Peterson gave his medic kit one final check. The former Special Forces medic had patched me up from Baghdad to the Hindu Kush. He caught my eye and gave a slight nod. Barely there. He felt the wrongness too. The helicopter dropped down into a small clearing about 2 kilometers from our target. As the landing gear touched Earth, I felt the familiar weight of my HK-4 settle against my shoulder. Same rifle I'd carried through dozens of operations. Comfortable, dependable. "Remember," Frank yelled over the beating rotors, "this is straightforward. We grab Dr. Aris, secure the research, and get back to the landing zone. Valera pays us whether he wants to come quietly or not." "Roger that," I responded out of habit. One last job. Then I could finally buy that land in Montana, leave all this violence behind, maybe even reach out to my sister again. The jungle swallowed us the moment the helicopter lifted away. We moved in a tight stack formation, the heavy heat instantly soaking through our gear. The constant screeches and buzz of wildlife made a confusing background noise, perfect hiding for potential threats. Site Chimera appeared out of the trees like an alien thing, smooth white walls clashing violently with the wild jungle around it. The perimeter fence had been broken through, not by something coming in, but blown outwards, classic sign of trouble starting inside. "Comms check," Frank ordered. We each reported in. Good to go. "Specs, try facility channels again." Kevin fiddled with his gear. Still nothing but static. "Going dynamic entry," Frank decided. "Standard breach. I'm on point. Kane, rear security." We approached the main entrance, weapons ready. The heavy security door stood halfway open, its lifting gear dead. Frank flashed the signal. We went in. The smell hit me first. Ozone, sharp and electric, mixed with something metallic. Like blood, but somehow different. Wrong. The entrance was destroyed. Equipment smashed. Security desks abandoned. Long, dark smears ran down the white walls. Dried blood, at least 72 hours old, Doc confirmed, touching one streak. Hardened. We pushed deeper, our flashlights stabbing into the darkness as the power flickered on and off. Emergency lights blinked weakly, making jumpy shadows dance across the hospital-clean hallways. "Where are the bodies?" Specs whispered, his voice tight. "My thoughts exactly. Violence screamed from the wreckage, but no dead, not even spent bullet shells. 15 years fighting everywhere from deserts to cities. I'd never seen a shootout without brass littering the floor. We found Dr. Aris's main lab on the second sublevel. More destruction, more dried blood, research papers scattered like fallen leaves. Frank signaled Specs to hack the computers while Doc and I covered the exits. "Found something," Kevin called out. "Research notes. Last entry dated 3 days ago." I looked over his shoulder at the screen. Phrases jumped out. "Adaptive cellular regeneration. Perfect mimicry at the molecular level. Complete memory transfer." What the hell was this guy cooking up? Doc muttered. Frank was already copying the data to a secure drive. Not our problem. We find Aris, we get... A clear, controlled voice cut through the silence, drifting from a dark hallway beyond the lab. Hello? Is someone there? Please. I need help. We froze instantly, rifles aimed at the doorway. Dr. Aris? Frank barked. Yes, the voice answered. Please hurry, they'll be back soon. Frank signaled us to move forward. As we neared the darkness where the voice seemed to come from, a cold certainty settled in my gut. We weren't the ones finding Dr. Aris. Something had found us. We pushed forward into the darkness, the cold weight of dread settling in my stomach. Frank took point, his silhouette rigid with tension as we followed the voice calling for help. The sound bounced off the concrete walls, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. Stay tight, Frank whispered. Could be survivors. Could be a trap. The residential wing of Site Chimera was a maze of narrow corridors and small living quarters. Personal belongings lay scattered everywhere. Family snapshots, books, a child's tattered stuffed animal, evidence of lives hurriedly abandoned. The emergency lights painted everything in a sickly red glow, twisting familiar objects into weird, threatening shadows. Dr. Aris? Frank called again. Security team from Valera Corporation, we're here to help. This way, the voice answered, seeming to come from our left this time. Hurry, it's coming back! We changed direction, moving toward the sound. Doc cleared each room we passed while Specs kept watch behind us. The voice kept leading us deeper, always just around the next corner, always waiting through the next doorway. Notice something? I muttered under my breath to Frank. He gave a tiny nod. Voice never gets closer. After 10 minutes of playing this deadly game, we reached an area where the emergency lights had failed entirely. Our rifle lights cut narrow beams through the absolute blackness. The voice had gone completely silent. Then we heard it. Faint, ragged whimpering coming from behind a fortified door. Not the calm, directing voice we'd been chasing, but the sounds of genuine human fear. Frank and I took positions flanking the door while Specs got ready to force it open. The nameplates read, Dr. Elias Aris, Research Director. On 3, Frank whispered. 1, 2. The breach was textbook. We swept the cramped office in seconds. We found only one person, a thin, broken man curled up beneath a sturdy metal desk. His lab coat was smeared with dark stains I didn't want to think about. When our lights hit him, he let out a terrified shriek and shoved himself against the wall as if trying to melt into it. Dr. Aris? Frank lowered his weapon slightly. The man's eyes were wide and rolling, showing nothing but pure fear and exhaustion. Are you real? His voice was raw and cracked, nothing like the smooth tones that had drawn us in. Doc moved forward slowly. Sir, we're extraction. Are you hurt? Aris laughed, a horrible sound that choked off into a sob. Doesn't matter now. You're all dead. We're all dead. His frantic gaze jumped from face to face among us. It escaped. My perfect mimic. Cellular absorption and replication, right down to the molecular level. It eats them. Takes everything. Their bodies, everything they knew. Slow down, Frank said firmly. Define the threat. What are we dealing with? Aris clutched Frank's jacket sleeve with bony fingers. An organism that absorbs its victims entirely. Perfect camouflage, perfect infiltration. It looks human, sounds human, remembers what they remembered, but it's not human. The overhead lights flickered wildly, then died completely, plunging us into darkness except for our rifle beams. A moment later, a harsh, blaring alarm screamed through the halls. "Emergency containment protocol initiated!" An emotionless mechanical voice announced over the facility's speakers. "Lockdown commencing in 5 seconds." "Move!" Frank yelled, grabbing Aris roughly by the arm. We sprinted for the doorway as heavy metal shutters hissed down from the ceiling. Specs was a step ahead, darting through before it closed. "Hurry!" he shouted back. The rest of us scrambled through under the descending shutter. We turned to regroup just as a final barrier slammed down hard, sealing Specs off from us on the other side. The barrier locked with a sharp pneumatic hiss. "Specs!" I hammered on the solid metal. "Kevin, can you hear me?" A muffled yell came through, followed by sounds of a brief, sharp struggle, ending in an unnatural silence. "The system cycles open every 5 minutes, Aris hissed, eyes bulging. "But it's too late if it found him." "Shut it," Frank growled. "Specs is fine, probably just lost comms." We waited in an unbearably tense silence. Dr. Aris kept whispering about perfect absorption and total cellular integration, his eyes flicking nervously to every deep shadow. He looked like he expected something terrible to step out of them. Finally, after what felt like forever, the shutter groaned upwards. I tightened my grip on my rifle, bracing for whatever we'd find. It was Specs. He stood there adjusting his glasses, pale but unhurt. "Jesus," he breathed out. "Something brushed past me in the dark. Probably just loose wiring or something, but..." He shook his head. "What happened? Did I miss anything?" A flood of relief washed over me, instantly cut short. A choked gasp came from behind us. Dr. Aris was staring at Specs, at Kevin, his face twisted by utter terror. He scrambled backwards, pressing himself hard against the wall. "No, no, no," he whimpered over and over. That's not him." Specs frowned. "Sir, I'm Kevin O'Malley, technical specialist. I'm here to help you." Aris clutched at his chest, his face turning ashen. "I know what my creation looks like when it's wearing someone else's face." He collapsed before anyone could react. Doc rushed to him, checking frantically, but it was already too late. The scientist's heart had given out. His eyes were fixed wide open, staring into nothing, frozen in an expression of absolute bone-deep horror. I looked at Specs, at Kevin, who stared back with genuine shock and confusion on his face. Normal reactions, soldier reactions. But as Frank ordered us to secure Aris's research and prepare to evacuate, something cold shifted inside me. A seed of doubt took root, deep down where instinct lives. Why had Aris looked at Kevin that way? What had he seen in those moments that we hadn't? And if that creature was real, if it could truly copy a person down to the smallest memory, how would any of us ever know until it was too late? I forced myself to focus on the mission. Frank was talking to the chopper pilot on the sat phone, finalizing our pickup spot. Doc was sealing up Aris's biological samples in their secure cases. And Kevin was hooked up to the central server, downloading Aris's research files. "How's it coming, Specs?" Frank called over, his voice bouncing around the cold, empty lab. Kevin's fingers flew over the keys. "Almost done. Their security lock isn't anything special, nothing I haven't handled before." He let out a low chuckle that made the hair on my neck stand up. Guess old man Eris wasn't the genius he cracked himself up to be. I froze. In 3 years of knowing Kevin O'Malley, I'd never once heard him make fun of someone, especially not a guy who'd just died. Kevin was our tech guy, yeah, but he was also the quietest teammate we had, almost painfully polite. That dark joke hung in the air like a bad omen. Frank didn't seem to pick up on it. Just grab what we need. I want us moving in 30 minutes. I moved closer to Kevin, watching him work. His body language looked normal, the hunched shoulders, the little tap of his foot while he concentrated. But something felt wrong. Kevin always muttered to himself when he worked, whispering a running commentary only he understood. Now, he was dead silent, his face locked down tight. "You okay?" I asked, keeping my voice low. His eyes cut to mine, holding my gaze a heartbeat too long. "Fine. Why wouldn't I be? You seem not yourself." A smile spread across his face. "Not myself, how?" Before I could answer, Frank cut in. "Kane, Doc, perimeter check. No surprises before we bug out." Doc gave a sharp nod, clicking the last sample case shut. "On it!" As we walked the hallways, Doc kept pace beside me. "What's eating you?" "Got that hollow look again." I picked my words. "Did Kevin seem strange to you back there?" Doc shrugged. "We're all stressed. Just found a lab stuffed with nightmare fuel and watched a man die scared. Cut the kid a break." I nodded, but the wrong feeling didn't ease. Back in the lab, Kevin was yanking a cable, holding a data drive. "Got it all," he announced, tossing the drive to Frank. "Full project history, research notes, video logs, everything." Frank pocketed the drive. "Solid. Let's figure our way out." We gathered around a map showing the jungle outside. Frank pointed to a clear spot a few kilometers east. "Primary pickup point is here. Backup is about 2 clicks south if things get messy." Kevin leaned in, studying the map. "We should cut straight through here." He traced a finger over a hatched area. "It's faster." I knew that spot. That's a swamp basin, bad ground, quicksand risk. Add 20 minutes and go around. "Since when are you scared of mud, Kane?" Kevin's voice had a sharpness to it I'd never heard. "We can handle some wet." Frank frowned. "Specs, you're usually the one preaching the safe route over the quick one." "Maybe I'm changing," Kevin replied with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Besides, time's short. Who knows what else is crawling around out there?" The Kevin O'Malley I knew would actively avoid the safe route. Back in Afghanistan, he mapped out 3 separate escape paths plus backup plans for each. He'd never suggest risky terrain, especially not hauling priceless intel. "Kane's right," Frank decided. "We go around." Kevin's jaw tightened just a fraction. "Whatever you say, boss." Packing up, I caught Kevin watching me, his face unreadable. When our eyes met, he smiled, that same lopsided grin I knew so well, but this time it sent ice down my spine. "Something on your mind, Eric?" he asked, using my first name instead of Kane, breaking our team rules flat out. "Just ready to get clear of this place," I replied, checking my weapon again, a 3rd time. "You feel that?" He clapped me on the shoulder, his hand lingering just a little too long. "Soon we'll be home free, just as 4 brothers, like always." But we weren't brothers. Not anymore. Because one of us wasn't us at all. Moving toward the exit, Frank pulled me aside. "You're seeing ghosts, Kane. I need you sharp." "My head is right where it should be," I shot back. You seriously don't see anything off about Kevin? Frank's eyes turned hard. We're running on fumes. Don't poke the bear if you can't handle the bite. I wanted to push it, but Frank was already moving out. I fell in behind Doc, Kevin on the rear. I could feel his eyes on my back like cold fingers. Just before we stepped out into the jungle, I glanced back at the shadowed doorway of the facility. I swear something moved in the dark, a shifting, shapeless mass pulling back into the blackness. Then it was gone. "Coming, Kane?" Kevin called, his voice bright, normal. I nodded and stepped into the green hell, helpless against the feeling that we weren't leaving the horror behind. We were bringing it right along with us. The jungle swallowed us whole. The canopy above formed a solid ceiling, turning what little daylight remained into an eerie green twilight. We moved in standard patrol formation, Frank on point, Kevin behind him, me third, and Doc guarding our rear. Every step deeper made my unease sharpen like a knife. Kevin's route led us through thick brush. The humidity was suffocating, like breathing through a wet cloth. Sweat soaked my gear, and clouds of mosquitoes swarmed our faces despite the bug spray. "This doesn't look right," Frank muttered after 40 minutes of pushing through. He checked his GPS. "Kevin, you promised this was a straight shot." Kevin just shrugged. "Satellite pictures aren't perfect. We'll hit the ridge soon, then it's easy walking to extraction." Frank nodded, but I caught the sideways look he shot Kevin. The old Kevin would have double-checked every step. This guy acted like being wrong didn't matter. As the last light faded, we clicked on our night vision goggles. The world turned toxic green, shadows stretching into nightmares between the trees. We passed a pool of stagnant water, its surface unnaturally still, ignoring the constant drip from above. "Hold," Frank hissed, raising his fist like a hammer. We froze instantly. Something big crashed through the brush ahead, then vanished. Probably just an animal. After 30 seconds of silence, Frank lowered his hand, and we pushed on. Kevin pulled out the satellite phone for a status call. As he fumbled with it, his fingers seemed to slip. Too smooth, too fake, and the phone fell. It hit the mud once, bounced, then slid over the edge and down into a deep ravine. "Shit," Kevin said, his voice flat. Static. "That was our emergency comms." Frank cursed, low and vicious. "We need that phone." "I'll get it," Doc volunteered, already moving toward the edge. "I'm lightest. 2 minutes tops." Frank hesitated, only for a second. "Go fast. Secure your line." Doc offered a quick nod and started down, his outline swallowed by the gloom below. The three of us stood silent, listening to the scrape of his boots on the muddy slope. Then, silence. "Doc," Frank called after 30 seconds. "You good down there?" Nothing. "David?" he yelled louder, using his name this time. Kevin stood behind Frank, not looking at the ravine, but right at me. His lips twisted into something that wasn't a smile, something wrong. "I'll check," Kevin offered, but his boots stayed planted. A low, wet gurgle pulled my attention back. Kevin's body started jerking. Small trembles at first, then violent shudders racked him. His shoulders hunched under his gear, bent at angles no bone should allow. Through the green glow of my goggles, his face changed. Like wax held too close to flame, his features blurred and slid. "Frank!" I hissed, bringing my rifle up. Frank turned. Confusion warped into raw horror as Kevin collapsed to his knees. He convulsed, his limbs snapping and bending backward. His uniform rippled, bulging, as if the body beneath was tearing itself apart and reforming.
"What the hell?"
Frank choked out, his own weapon snapping up. Kevin slumped forward. His shape dissolved. He wasn't solid anymore, just a wet, grayish pile of squirming mess on the jungle floor, glistening sickly green in the night vision. Aris's terrified warnings screamed in my head. This thing didn't just copy. It changed. And now Doc was... "Got it!" David's voice called up, strangely cheerful from the darkness below. "Coming back up!" Frank and I locked eyes. Understanding flashed between us in an instant. Whatever climbed that hill wouldn't be David anymore. We heard the scrape of boots scraping dirt, the rustle of plants pushed aside. A flashlight beam stabbed upward, lighting the undersides of leaves. "Guys!" Doc's voice called again, closer now. Too close. "Little help, it's steeper near the top." Frank's hand tightened on his weapon. I saw his knuckles bleach white, his breath short and harsh through his nose. We were cornered. Behind us, the endless, hungry jungle. Ahead, the thing wearing Doc's face, pulling itself closer with our friend's hands. Frank raised his rifle. "Kane," he whispered, not taking his eyes off the edge of the ravine. "On 3. I nodded. I knew exactly what he meant. We'd trained for this 1,000 times, just not against something wearing our friend's face. 1, 2, 3. We fired together into the blackness where Doc's voice had come from. Then we turned and bolted. The jungle gobbled us up. Branches clawed at our faces. Roots tripped us with every step. Behind us rose a sound I'll never get out of my head, not a scream, but a wet, furious hissing. "Move!" Frank shouted. The night vision on my rifle bathed everything in a green glow, but everything looked flat, messing with my sense of distance. I tripped over a fallen log, lost my footing and slammed down a slope. My helmet cracked against something solid, and stars exploded behind my eyes. When my vision cleared, I was alone. "Frank?" I whispered into the thick air. Only insects droned and distant beasts howled. No answer. I checked my compass, turned toward the extraction point, and crept forward. Every snap in the brush froze me. Every shifting shadow could have been that monster wearing Kevin's skin. Or Doc's. About 20 minutes later, I heard movement ahead. I ducked low, rifle butt tight against my shoulder. "Kane, it's me." Frank's voice strained. "How do I know that?" My finger pressed the trigger guard. He stepped out, hands raised slightly. "'Cause I'm not trying to kill you yet." Dark humor, pure Frank. But was it? "What happened?" I asked. I didn't move closer. "Lost it back in the trees. Think I hit it, though. Thing bleeds." He wiped sweat off his forehead. "We got to hit that extraction point. Chopper wheels up in 90 minutes. I nodded, but kept my rifle ready as we moved. I watched his every step, listened to his every syllable. Did he walk like that normally? Hold the gun that certain tight way? The fear of wrongness was choking me. "You think it's just one?" I asked. "Or could there be more?" Frank glanced back. "One's plenty." The next hour felt like hiking through a nightmare. Silent the whole way. The clearing was our goal, about 3 kilometers further east of the pickup. By the time we got near, the sky was starting to lighten. The chopper would be here soon. We stopped just inside the tree line at the clearing's edge, almost home free, just us and the coming dawn. "We made it," Frank said, his voice thick with relief. Too much relief? I stared at him. Yeah. He must have felt my suspicion. Kane, Eric, it's really me. 15 years, brother? Prove it, I said, quiet, steady. Frank sighed, then met my eyes. Remember Kandahar, after Jackson bought it? You found me behind the barracks, only person who ever caught me crying. The memory was right. The words were right. But something felt off. Frank's eyes were dry, empty, like he was stating facts. The real Frank? His voice always splintered a little, just barely, when Jackson's name came up. Every time, it cost him to remember. It cost him. Frank would never toss that out there so easy, I said, bringing my rifle up fast. His face changed, subtle, just a flicker of cold thought in his eyes. Eric, listen, you're not thinking straight. It's the stress, the jungle, no damn sleep. I put 2 rounds center mass. The thing staggered back, more shocked than hurt. Its skin moved, began to ripple and distort. I emptied my magazine into it before the change finished. I stood there forever, it felt like, watching the remains jerk and bubble away. Slowly, the jungle rustled back to life, like it finally dared to breathe. The distant womp-womp of the helicopter cut the air as the sun finally broke the horizon. I walked into the center, fired a signal flare. The bird came down through the morning mist. I climbed in alone, covered in sweat and worse, feeling empty inside. "Just you?" the pilot yelled over the engines. I nodded, didn't speak, stared down at the endless green blur below as we lifted off. I'd made the call, the right one. At least that's what I keep telling myself.